river that demanded flesh. The air in Kampong Chnang doesn't just hang, it clings. It has a weight to it, a sticky, humid presence that promises sweat the moment you step out of an air-conditioned car. I remember that feeling perfectly. It was the last gasp of the monsoon, that time of year when the rains have mostly finished their fury, but the land hasn't yet had a chance to dry. The earth itself feels like it's holding its breath, waterlogged and waiting. I was there to see my grandfather. Tithe, he lived in a small village that crouched on the edge of a deep, slow-moving tributary of the Tonal Sap, a place of stilted wooden houses connected by a web of rickety docks, where the rhythm of life was dictated by the rise and fall of the water. I'd spent holidays there as a child, but as a young man with a life in Phnom Penh, the village felt ancient, a relic. My visits had become less frequent, replaced by phone calls and money sent through Wing. But my mother had insisted. She said his voice sounded frail, distant. She said he was spending too much time staring at the river. So I went. The tuk-tuk dropped me at the edge of the dirt road, unable to go further. From there, it was a walk along a narrow, muddy path, the jungle on one side, the expanse of waterlogged rice paddies on the other. The sounds were immediate, overwhelming. The frantic drone of 1,000 cicadas, the high-pitched chirp of geckos, the distant putter of a long-tail boat engine, and beneath it all the constant, wet sigh of the land. I saw him before he saw me. He was sitting at the end of his personal dock, a small, weathered platform that extended from the stilts of his house out over the water. He was just a silhouette against the flat, gray sky of late afternoon. A thin old man, his sarong tied neatly at his waist, his back as straight and unyielding as the hardwood posts holding up his home. He wasn't fishing. He wasn't mending a net. He was just sitting, staring down into the murky water. "Ta," I called out, my city shoes slipping in the mud. He didn't turn at first. It took a second call before his head slowly angled in my direction. When he finally stood and faced me, I saw the look on his face. It wasn't the warm, crinkly-eyed smile I remembered. It was a tight, strained expression, a look of profound, soul-deep exhaustion. "Dara," he said, his voice a dry rasp, "you came, Coon." He led me into the house, a single large room raised high above the water line. The air inside was thick with the scent of jasmine incense burning before a small, dusty altar to our ancestors. Photos of my grandmother, a woman I barely remembered, sat next to a chipped porcelain Buddha. It was the smell of my childhood, the smell of tradition and respect, but something else was mixed in with it, a different scent, drifting in from the open windows that faced the river. It was sweet, cloyingly so, but with a sharp, metallic undertone, like fruit left to rot in a tin can. "I brought you some things from the city," I said, unpacking my bag. "Medicine, some packaged sweets, a new radio." He barely glanced at them. His eyes, dark and cloudy with age, kept drifting back towards the water. "The river is not well," he said, his voice low. I looked out the window. The water was a strange color, not the usual muddy brown of the post-monsoon season, but a deeper, rustier shade, almost red. It looked thick, heavy, as if the current was struggling to move. "It's just the silt from the last rains, Ta," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "It will clear up in a few days." He shook his head slowly, a gesture of absolute certainty. "No, this is not silt. This is different. This is a debt." I didn't know what to say to that. A debt. It sounded like the kind of cryptic, superstitious talk that city life had taught me to dismiss. I figured his age was making him fanciful. I just smiled, patted his thin shoulder and started helping him prepare the evening meal. But as we ate our rice and Trey Aang grilled fish, I couldn't get the smell out of my nostrils. That sweet, sickly perfume of decay. And I couldn't stop myself from glancing out at that slow, coppery water, flowing like old blood under a bruised sky. That night, I learned that the village had a new sound. Sleep doesn't come easy in the countryside when you're used to the city's white noise. Here, every sound is distinct, sharp. The frantic buzzing of a mosquito near your ear, the sudden, guttural croak of a toad, the rustle of some small creature in the thatched roof. I lay under my mosquito net listening. And then I heard it. It came from the water from directly beneath the house. It wasn't the familiar, gentle lapping of waves against the wooden stilts. This was a heavier sound, a wet, weighty slap, slap, pause, slap. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like someone slowly, methodically beating a soaked carpet against the posts. It was a sound with muscle behind it, with immense weight. I sat up, my heart starting to thud in my chest. I looked over at my grandfather's sleeping mat. He wasn't there. A sliver of moonlight cut through a gap in the wooden shutters, illuminating the empty space. A cold knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I crept to the window and peered out. The moon was a sickly yellow, shrouded in a thin veil of clouds. It cast a greasy, jaundiced light over the surface of the river. And there, at the end of the dock, was Tithe. He was standing in the exact same spot I'd found him in earlier, staring down into the crimson depths. He was holding a small, lit candle, its tiny flame flickering, making his wrinkled face a mask of dancing shadows. He seemed to be whispering something, his lips moving, but the words were lost to the night. And the sound continued. Slap, slap, that heavy, wet impact from the darkness right below him. I couldn't see anything, just the glint of the foul water, but I could feel it. A presence. Something vast and ancient, shifting its weight in the murky water beneath our home. The cloying scent of overripe mangoes and rust was stronger than ever, a nauseating perfume carried on the night air. I felt a primal fear, the kind a child feels when they are certain a monster is hiding under their bed. I wanted to call out to him, to tell him to come inside, to bolt the door and hide until morning. But my throat was tight, my voice gone. I could only watch as my grandfather stood vigil, a lone old man making some silent plea to the darkness, while something heavy and wet and impossibly large slapped against the foundations of our world. The next morning, the village was buzzing with a low, fearful energy. A fisherman, a man named Bong Vanna, had not returned home. His wife was wailing, a sound of pure grief that cut through the morning mist. They had found his boat, empty, drifting in a patch of thick, red-brown water downstream. One side of the small wooden canoe was splintered, with deep, gouge-like scratches in the wood, as if it had been bitten by something with an impossibly wide jaw. The village elder came to see my grandfather. They spoke in low, hushed tones on the veranda, their faces grim. I caught snippets of their conversation. Words like promise, neglect, appeasement. The elder kept glancing nervously towards the river, his hand trembling as he wiped sweat from his brow. When he left, Tithe was quiet for a long time. He sat on his mat, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze fixed on nothing. "Ta," I finally asked, my voice hesitant. "What are they talking about? What promise?" He took a deep, rattling breath, and it seemed to cost him a great deal of effort. "Our family, Dara," he began, his voice barely a whisper. "My grandfather's grandfather. He was the first to build his house on this spot. The fishing was poor, the floods were unforgiving. The people were starving, so he made a pact." I leaned closer, my skepticism warring with a creeping dread. "There is a spirit in this river," he continued, his eyes locking onto mine. "An old one, a powerful one. They call him the Kropeu Charavan, the greedy crocodile. He is not a normal animal, coon. He is a lord of the deep places, ancient and hungry. Our ancestor went to the water's edge on a moonless night and he made an offering. He begged the Kropeu for its blessing, abundant fish, protection from the rising water. In return, he promised the spirit a tithe." "A tithe," I repeated. Once a year, on the last full moon of the rainy season, our family was to give the river its due. The largest, fattest pig from our stock. A blood offering to honor the pact and satisfy the spirit's hunger. He fell silent, and I could hear the slap of the water against the stilts, even in the daylight. It sounded different now, threatening. "For generations we kept the promise," Tithe said, his voice laced with a sorrow so deep it seemed to crack. "My grandfather did, my father did, I did for most of my life. The village prospered. The fish were always plentiful, the floods never reached our homes. We were safe." "What happened?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. People forget, he sighed. Prosperity makes them lazy. My son, your uncle, he thought it was foolish. An old superstition. He said, why waste a good pig? The fish are there because of the season. The floods are low because of luck. He started giving a smaller pig, then a sickly one. The year before he left for Thailand, he gave nothing. He closed his eyes, a pained expression on his face. And since he left, I have been old and poor. The other villagers, they see no reason to help. They take the river's bounty, but they do not remember the price. The pact has been broken for 5 years. A cold dread, slick and oily, seeped into my bones. The red water, the missing fishermen, the scent of rust and decay. It wasn't pollution, it was a wound. The river was bleeding because of a broken promise. Ta, I said, my voice shaking slightly. It's just a story. Vanna probably fell from his boat, and a crocodile, a normal crocodile. Do not be a fool, boy, he snapped, his voice suddenly sharp, fierce. A normal crocodile does not turn the water to blood. A normal crocodile does not leave scratches like that. It does not smell of rot and metal. The Kropeu Charavan is patient, but its patience has run out. It was not given its tithe in meat. So now it has come to collect its tithe in flesh. That afternoon, I decided I couldn't just sit there. My mind, my modern, educated mind, was screaming for a rational explanation. It was a crocodile, a huge, territorial saltwater crocodile that had somehow made its way up the tributary. The story was just a way for the villagers to explain a natural predator. The red water was an algae bloom caused by runoff. The smell was rotting vegetation. It all made sense. It had to. I borrowed a small paddle boat, ignoring my grandfather's desperate pleas to stay away from the water. You do not understand what you are dealing with, he cried from the dock, his voice thin with terror. It will smell our bloodline. It will know you. I pushed his words away. I was going to find proof. I would paddle to where Vanna's boat was found, look for tracks on the riverbank, something tangible, something I could show the village elder, a reason to call the wildlife authorities from the provincial capital. The river was eerily quiet. The usual chorus of birds and monkeys from the jungle fringe was silent. The only sound was the dip and pull of my paddle in the thick, viscous water. It felt like rowing through syrup. The coppery red color was even more vibrant up close. It coated my paddle in a slick, oily film. And the smell, oh, the smell was overwhelming out here. It got in my mouth, a taste of sweet rot and old pennies. I found the spot easily. Vanna's boat was still there, tied to a half-submerged tree, a sad, lonely monument. I steered my boat closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. The scratches on the side were deeper than I'd imagined. 3 parallel gouges, each as wide as my hand, splintering the wood as if it were paper. No animal I knew could do that. I looked around, scanning the muddy banks. No tracks, no slide marks, nothing, just the oppressive silence and the thick, red water. The air grew heavy, the humidity pressing down on me like a physical weight. I felt like I was being watched. The feeling was so intense, so palpable, that the hairs on my arms stood on end. I looked down into the water beside my boat. For a moment, it was just an opaque, crimson mirror reflecting the gray sky. Then something shifted in the depths, a shadow. A vast, dark shape moving with an unnatural speed. It was impossibly large, bigger than any boat on this river, bigger than any crocodile I had ever seen or heard of. It wasn't swimming. It was uncoiling. Panic, cold, and absolute seized me. I jammed my paddle into the water and pulled, my muscles screaming. The boat felt sluggish, held back by the thick liquid. I risked a glance behind me. The surface of the water was breaking. Not with a fin or a snout, but with a long, ridged back, dark and armored like ancient rock, covered in what looked like moss and river weed. It was wider than my boat was long, and then I saw the eyes, just for a second. 2 glowing, coppery discs that rose above the surface, regarding me with a cold, ancient intelligence. There was no hunger in them, no animal instinct. There was only judgment, a profound, cosmic disappointment. Then it submerged. The water swirled in a massive, silent vortex that threatened to capsize my tiny boat. I didn't wait. I paddled with a strength born of pure terror, not daring to look back, my breath coming in ragged, sobbing gasps. I didn't stop until the hull of my boat scraped against the stilts of our dock. I scrambled out, falling onto the wet wood, shaking uncontrollably. My grandfather was there. He just looked at me with his sad, tired eyes. "Now you know," he said softly. "It is not an animal we can hunt. It is a god we have offended." That night the slapping sound returned, but it was different. It wasn't just beneath our house anymore. It was everywhere. We could hear it from upriver, then downriver, a chorus of heavy, wet impacts against wood and earth. It was the sound of something immense patrolling its domain, searching. No one slept in the village that night. Every house had a candle or a lamp burning. The air was thick with the smoke from 100 incense sticks and the silent, collective prayer of a terrified community. Then came the screaming. It started abruptly, a woman's shriek of pure, undiluted horror from a house a few docks down. It was cut off as suddenly as it began, replaced by a sound that will haunt me until the day I die. The sound of splintering wood, a deep, resonant crack, followed by a tremendous splash. Then silence. A silence more terrifying than the scream it replaced. A child had been taken, snatched from a sleeping mat near an open window. Her father had seen it. He sat outside his broken home, rocking back and forth, his eyes wide and unseeing, muttering the same word over and over. "Kropeu, Kropeu," he described a long, dark head, scaled and ancient, with eyes that glowed like hot coals, emerging from the water to take his daughter. The village turned. Fear, when it gets strong enough, needs a target, and the target was us, my family, the keepers of the broken pact. By dawn, a small, angry crowd had gathered on the path leading to our dock. They didn't have weapons, not yet, but their faces were hard with blame and terror. They shouted at my grandfather that this was his family's fault, that his ancestors' sin had come to claim their children. Tithe faced them, not with anger, but with a terrible, resigned sadness. "You are right," he said, his voice carrying over the water. "The debt belongs to my house, and I will pay it." He turned and looked at me. "Dara," he said, his voice firm but his hand trembling as he placed it on my shoulder. "You must leave. Go back to the city. This is not your burden to bear. You did not break the promise." "No," I cried, grabbing his arm. "We can leave together. We can go now." He smiled, a faint, heartbreaking twitch of his lips. "And where would I go, Coon? It is not the village I must escape. It is the river. And that river flows everywhere. It is in my blood. The debt is in my blood. It will follow me. No, it ends here tonight." He spent the rest of the day in quiet preparation. He put on his best silk sarong, the one he saved for weddings and funerals. He lit fresh incense at the altar and prayed for a long time, his voice a low, melodic murmur. He didn't eat. He just sat and waited for the sun to go down. I pleaded with him, I begged, I tried to reason with him. I told him we could call the police, the army. He just shook his head. "They have guns," he said. "The Kropeu has time, it has the water, it has our name. You cannot kill a promise." As dusk settled, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and blood orange, the change began. The river, which had been a murky crimson, began to deepen in color. It was no longer just tinted. It was becoming opaque, thick, like fresh paint. The smell was suffocating. My eyes watered and I felt bile rise in my throat. Tithe walked slowly, deliberately to the end of the dock. He carried no candle this time, no offering. He just stood there, his back straight, his face turned towards the darkening water. "Stay in the house, Dara," he commanded, his voice filled with a final, unshakable authority. "Bar the door, do not watch." But I couldn't leave him. I stayed in the doorway, my body hidden in the shadows, my heart feeling like a stone in my chest. The moon rose, the same sickly, jaundiced yellow as the night before. It cast a greasy sheen on the surface of the blood-dark water. The rhythmic slapping began, but it was close now, so close, right beneath the dock. Then it stopped. A deep, profound silence fell over the world. The cicadas went quiet. The geckos fell silent. All I could hear was the frantic pounding of my own blood in my ears. From the darkness under the dock, a new sound emerged. It was a low, guttural breathing, a wet, resonant sound like air being forced through a cavernous, water-filled lung. Inhale, exhale. Each breath was a rumble I could feel in the soles of my feet, vibrating up through the wooden stilts of the house. Ta-Sen did not flinch. He just stared down at the spot where the sound originated. "I am here," he said, his voice clear and steady in the still night air. "Sen of the line of Chan, I have come to pay the tithe." The water directly in front of him began to heave. It didn't ripple. It bulged upwards as if something of impossible mass was rising from the depths. A long, broad snout broke the surface, not of a crocodile, but of something far more primeval. The scales were the size of dinner plates, dark and crusted with age. Two nostrils, wide as my fists, vented a foul-smelling mist that smelled of the riverbed and the grave. And then the head lifted and I saw the eyes. They were not coppery tonight. They were burning molten gold, lit from within by an ancient, unforgiving fire. The creature was immense, its full size hidden in the crimson depths, but its head alone was as large as a small boat. This was no animal. This was a judgment, an elemental force given form. The Kropeu Charavan had come to collect. My grandfather took a single step forward, to the very edge of the wooden planks. "The pact is honored," he whispered. A low growl, a sound like shifting continents, rumbled from the creature's throat. It opened its jaw. I saw rows of teeth, not like a crocodile's, but thick and blunt like ancient standing stones, stained red by the water. In that moment, everything my grandfather had tried to tell me crashed down on me. The reality of it. This was not a story. This was not superstition. This was real, and it was about to take my grandfather. I don't know what came over me. I screamed his name and ran from the doorway out onto the dock. "Ta, no." His head snapped around, his eyes wide with shock and fury. "Go back, Dara. This is not for you." But it was too late. The creature's burning eyes shifted from him to me. It had seen me. It had acknowledged me. The guttural breathing hitched and a new sound joined it, a low, hungry hiss. It moved, not with a lunge, but with a terrifying, fluid surge. The dock groaned and splintered under the force of its movement. Ta-Sen, in a final act of love, of protection, shoved me with all his might. I stumbled backwards, falling hard on the dock as he stood his ground between me and the abyss. The last thing I saw was his face, calm and resolute, illuminated by the creature's terrible golden eyes. The last thing I heard was the deafening crack of ancient wood and a single sharp cry, swallowed by a great, wet, closing sound. And then silence. I lay there for how long, I don't know. My mind was a blank white screen of terror. When I finally dared to look, the dock was broken, the last few feet splintered and gone, dragged into the water. My grandfather was gone, and the creature was gone. The river was still. The water was still a deep, viscous crimson, but the surface was as smooth as glass. The heavy, wet slapping was gone. The guttural breathing was gone. The cloying scent of mangoes and rust was already beginning to fade, replaced by the simple, clean smell of the night air. The tithe had been paid. The debt was settled. For now. I left the village before the sun rose. I didn't speak to anyone. I just packed my bag, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip it, and I walked. I walked until I reached the main road, and I didn't look back. I am in Phnom Penh now. I am surrounded by concrete and glass, by the constant roar of traffic and the chatter of a million people. I try to lose myself in the noise, in the anonymity of the city. I tell myself I am safe here, that the world of stilted houses and blood-red rivers is a world away. But sometimes, when the rains come and the gutters overflow, I see the water run with a familiar, rusty tinge. Sometimes, when I pass a fruit vendor, a whiff of overripe mangoes will catch on the breeze, and my stomach will turn to ice. And late at night, when the city is quiet, sometimes I hear a sound from the pipes in my apartment building. A faint, wet, heavy slapping sound. My grandfather said the debt belonged to his house, to his blood. He paid it, but I was there. The creature saw me. It knows my face. It knows my name is on the altar in that empty, silent house on the river. My grandfather paid his generation's price for a broken promise, but a pact with something that old is not so easily settled. A debt is not just paid, it is passed down. So I am telling you this. Be careful of the old places. Be mindful of the old stories. And if you ever make a promise to something that dwells in the dark water, for the love of all that is good in this world, do not break it, because its memory is long, and its hunger is eternal, and it will always, always come to collect.